Okay, with the rhombus, the diagonals are perpendicular, but there's another property. Diagonals actually bisect opposite angles. So N and O are opposite angles, and they have been bisected. So angle MNQ would be the same as angle PNQ right here. Additionally, angle MOQ would be the same as POQ, and all four of those little angles are the same because all of angle N and all of angle O were congruent to begin with. And so MP is also bisecting opposite angles, so this is true right here. All right, so the last diagonal property is that the diagonals bisect opposite angles. Okay, now, if you take a rhombus and a rectangle and you combine the two, what you get is a square. So by definition, a square is a quadrilateral with 4 right angles and 4 congruent sides. So a square pretty much has it all. It is a parallelogram, so opposite sides are congruent, opposite angles are congruent, consecutive angles are supplementary, and diagonals bisect each other. But it's also a rectangle because of the 4 right angles, so the diagonals would be congruent to each other. And it's also a rhombus because the 4 sides are congruent, so the diagonals also are perpendicular to each other and bisect opposite angles. So the properties of the square would be all of them. Everything that we've mentioned in parallelograms, rectangles, and rhombus apply to a square. All right, let's apply this on the next page. So first we have a rectangle RS. And according to the instructions, we know that OS is 16. So I'm going to add 16 to the picture right here. So from O to S is 16. All right, the first question is, how far is it from O to Q? Well, because a rectangle is a parallelogram, diagonals are bisected, so the 2 pieces of one diagonal are the same length. So OQ is also 16. Next, we want to find the measure of angle QRS. So let's do that next. I want to do the measure of angle angle QRS. Right here. Well, by definition, a rectangle has 4 right angles, so that angle is 90 degrees. And next, we want to find the length of PR, diagonal PR. Well, the property of a rectangle's diagonals is that the diagonals are congruent. So PR is going to be the same as whatever SQ is. Well, SQ is 16 from S to O and 16 from O to Q, so it is a total of 32. So PR is also 32 units in length. Okay, number 2. This time we're looking at a square. So KLMN is a square. We know that NM is given to us as 8. The first question is, what is the measure of angle OKL? OKL. Well, remember that a square has all right angles. So right here is 90 degrees. And then because a square is also a rhombus, diagonals bisect opposite angles. So angle NKL, that's 90 degrees, has been bisected. So each piece is 45 and 45. So that is a 45-degree angle. Next, we want to find the measure of angle MOL. Again, a square is a rhombus because the sides are congruent, and rhombuses have perpendicular diagonals. So angle MOL is a 90-degree angle. And last, we want to find the perimeter of KLMN. Well, a square has all congruent sides, so all the way around the figure, the side lengths are 8. So 8 times 4 gives us 32 units for the perimeter. 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8 gives us 32. Okay, now we have rhombus, A, B, C, D, E. I'm sorry, just A, B, C, D. The distance from A to D is 11, and the distance from D to O is 6. So the first question is, how long is OB? Again, a rhombus is a parallelogram, so diagonals have been bisected. Each piece is 6, so OB is 6, because O is the midpoint of that diagonal. Next, I want to know the length of BC. Well, by definition of a rhombus, all four sides of the figure are the same length. So this is 11, and even BC is 11. And next I want to find the measure of angle AOD. So I want to find this measure right here. Well, if you remember, with a rhombus, diagonals are perpendicular, so that is a 90-degree angle right there. Okay, next is just an exercise in identifying the properties of each shape. So I would recommend that you pause this right now and try to answer each question by matching the description with all the terms that fit it. So there may be more than one answer for each. And you may not be very familiar with the kite as of yet, but we'll answer that. So go ahead and pause it and then come back to see the answers. Okay, number 4, diagonals bisect each other. That was originally a property of a parallelogram. So it's true of a parallelogram and in any of the parallelograms. So the parallelograms would be the rhombus, which is D, the rectangle, which is F, and the square, which is G. Number 5, diagonals are perpendicular. That first showed up with a rhombus, so that's D. And then it must also be a property of a square because a square is a rhombus that also has right angles. All right, number 6, diagonals are congruent. So that one first showed up with the rectangle. And the square has the same properties of as a rectangle. So that's F and G. We're not worried right now, by the way, about the kite or the trapezoid or the kite and the trapezoid we're going to leave off because we haven't studied those just yet. All right, number 7, measure of interior angles sum is 360. So if you remember, the 360 was a property of all quadrilaterals. So that would be C and D and F and G and H, all quadrilaterals. All right, number 8. Opposite sides are congruent. So opposite sides being congruent first showed up with a parallelogram. So it applies to a parallelogram and all the special parallelograms. So that's D, F, and G. And number 9, opposite angles are congruent. That again showed up with the parallelogram. So that's C, D, F, and G. Both diagonals bisect angles. That would be a property of a rhombus. If it's a property of a rhombus, it's also a property of a square. And number 11, diagonals are perpendicular. Again, that's a property of a rhombus, so it's also a property of a square. Okay, at this time, go ahead and pick up your 6-5 practice set from the substitute and get started on it and make sure it is finished by tomorrow.